Here we are picking up with the expansion of the Roman Republic. As Rome gained more power, the desire to spread its borders also came with it. Land hunger was probably the largest driving force, but we shouldn't discount other reasons as well. But whatever the reason, in the 4th century BC, Rome became allies with other Latin-speaking tribes, and they called themselves the Latin League. Some years later, the allies revolted against Rome unsuccessfully. Rome squashed the rebellion and dissolved the League, but instead of enslaving or completely annihilating its former allies, Rome offered them varying degrees of citizenship. The conquered people, probably being very appreciative of not being killed or enslaved, took advantage of this policy, which only served to strengthen Rome, because now you no longer have different tribes, you now only have Romans. In the year 387 BC, the Gauls, and that's people coming from modern-day France, basically, come in and they sack the city of Rome, which freaks them out, right? I mean, this Romans were very much concerned about an invasion happening again, and so the Romans begin to increase their imperialistic drive. They begin to increase their land holdings. They go out to conquer, and by 220 BCE, the Italian peninsula completely belongs to Rome. Now let's talk about the Roman military. Who could be in the Roman army? Well, only men could serve in the army, no women. Every Roman soldier was a Roman citizen, and he had to be at least 20 years old. Not supposed to get married while he was a soldier. And most soldiers in the Roman Empire, so we're not in the Republic right now, but in the we're in the Republic right now, not the Empire. Soldiers from the Roman Empire came from countries outside of the Italian peninsula. Let's talk about how they were divided up. They were divided into different units, right? So there were about 30 legions in the Roman army. Each legion had between 4,000 and 6,000 soldiers. Each legion had 10 cohorts. Each cohort was made up of about 6 troops of maybe 80 legionnaires, called centuries. And each century was led by a centurion. A centurion carried a short rod to show his importance, to show his rank, basically. He could also use his stick to beat any soldier who disobeyed an order. And the officer commanding an entire legion was referred to as a legate. So they each have, so each grouping has a particular commander, and obedience, highly prized, disobedience, very much disciplined. When you joined the military, you joined until you died, or until any sort of campaign was over. If at any time you disobeyed, or if you simply did not perform up to the standards of what your commanding officer believed you should have, the commanding officers could practice decimation, or the act of killing 1 in 10 of their soldiers. Legionnaires were the best Roman soldiers, as well as the best paid. There were other soldiers, though. An auxiliary was a soldier who was not a Roman citizen. He was paid about a third as much as a legionnaire. Auxiliaries guarded forts and frontiers, but they also fought in battles, more often than not on the front lines, where it was most dangerous. Some soldiers had special skills. They shot bows and arrows, they used slingshots, or they could swim rivers in order to surprise an enemy, sort of like modern day like Navy SEALs. Artillery soldiers fired catapults, or onagers, and machines basically that fired rocks or balls of burning tar. The Romans also used big wind-up crossbows called ballistas. Usually Romans like to fight on foot, They used cavalry, that's, soldiers riding horses. They used cavalry to chase an enemy who was running away. In a battle, the cavalry also often lined up on either side of the infantry or the foot soldiers. We know about Roman armor and weapons from Roman pictures and statues, as well as things found by archaeologists. A Roman soldier's armor was made from strips of iron and leather. On his head was a metal helmet, and he carried a rectangular shield, which was curved so that it protected his body. And the shield was made of wood as well as of leather. And you can see my fun little picture that I found on the internet there. The soldier's main weapons were a short sword for stabbing and a long spear or javelin for throwing. The one piece of armor that my husband, who's a veteran, likes to point out as being incredibly important are the sandals, the shoes. The sandals were designed to help the Romans march for long distances. They were strong, they were well ventilated, they allowed soldiers to march very quickly, and they often had metal studs at the bottom in order to make them last longer. In order for the military to be as strong as it was, the training was rather intensive. So Roman soldiers kept fit by normal things that we would think of, right? You run, lots of running, but with your armor on. So when you're carrying iron, that's a lot. Marching by sparring or practice fighting, right? They could march 20 miles a day sometimes wearing armor. They could swim across rivers, build bridges, break their way into forts. Each man carried his weapons and shield, plus food and camping equipment. And of course, they are going to practice obeying orders. So, I mean, again, if you're going to be in the Roman military, you have to know how to obey. And lastly, here I mentioned about building bridges. The Roman military was also known for its engineering activities. So they're not just great soldiers; they also are adept at building things that's going to help them to get inside well-fortified areas. So this makes, all of this combined makes the Roman military definitely kind of scary against other people. Why was Rome so successful? I mean, we talk about the military, yeah, but I mean, having a good military does not always guarantee success. If we remember back, the Persians greatly outnumbered Alexander the Great, and yet Alexander still won. So Rome's success does derive mainly from its military. The army being as organized as it was, as obedient as it was, every soldier vowed to remain in the army until the end of the war, until death, whichever came first. I mean, the military is vastly important. And it's also huge because they have tons and tons and tons of people, especially as time goes on, and and the Roman Empire continues to absorb others. So there's lots of people to choose from, and with the organization and the tenacity of the Roman military, it's fairly obvious why that aspect is so important to Rome's success. But the Roman government was also prepared to lose as many troops as necessary. So yeah, go ahead, kill, let them die. Spend as much money as necessary. Whatever you need, let's do it. We'll go into debt, and we'll also fight as long as necessary. We're not going to give up. We're not going to quit. I just came back from lunch, and there was a girl who had a T-shirt on who said, what did it say? It was a softball shirt, and it said something to the effect of, cowards never start, the weak never finish, and winners never quit. That's what it said. So that's really kind of the idea behind Roman motivation. We will win no matter what it takes. We're not going to quit. We're not going to back down. So that definitely increases Rome's success rate. As the Roman Empire spread over the Italian peninsula, they also encountered outsiders. Carthage, originally a colony of Phoenicia, was on the other side of the Mediterranean and didn't really like how Rome was taking so much land. So in 264 BCE, the Romans faced off with Carthage in the First Punic War. Punic meant Phoenician, just in case you were wondering. In 241, the Romans won the First Punic War with a new naval fighting technique, adapted some from the Greek naval fighting. Instead of just ramming into the enemy's boats, Romans began boarding the enemy's boats. So they would have on their boats not just sailors, but foot soldiers. And as soon as a Carthage boat rammed into theirs, or when they ran into a Carthage boat, Roman soldiers would leap. They would run, and they would get onto the other ship, and they would start killing every enemy they came in contact with. So this allows them to utilize their fantastic hand-to-hand combat skills on the water. They take, in many ways, they look at the Peloponnesian War between the Spartans and the Athenians, and they say, let's combine the two of those. Let's fight like Spartans on the water, right? So, okay. In the Second Punic War, we meet the famous leader Hannibal. After the First Punic War, the two sides signed a treaty dividing some land in Spain. However, after some confusion, Carthage attacked a portion that seemingly belonged to Rome. Thus, the Second War began. Hannibal then took the fight to Italy. Instead of waiting for the Romans to come to Carthage, he went to Rome. And he had won a really great victory at the Battle of Cannae. Hannibal is really known for taking elephants and troops over the Alps in order to get to the Romans. Now, when this happened, the Romans instigated a delay-in-wait tactic. They simply refused to fight Hannibal, causing him really just to march up and down the Italian peninsula for almost 17 years. Then, a Roman general by the name of Scipio showed up, and he took the fight to Carthage, and Hannibal was ultimately defeated in 202 BCE. Not long after this, Cato the Elder, whom you will read about in one of your primary sources, if you have not already, he rose up in the Roman Senate. He hated Carthage. He's very, very prejudiced against Carthage. He sees them as inferior beings, basically. And Carthage, sadly for them, was stuck between a rock and a hard place. One of Rome's allies began encroaching on Carthage territory. But Carthage could not fight without having Rome enter the fray. So Cato the Elder convinced the Senate that Rome needed to destroy Carthage, which they did in 146 BCE, thus ending the third and final Punic War. And Carthage and the area around it became a province. After the Third Punic War, we see Greece and Macedonia offered friendship, in which they were expected to act as Rome's clients. Now, they don't exactly like this idea, because if you remember the patron-client system, what are clients expected to give their patron but unbending loyalty? Unbending loyalty. And Greece and Macedonia really are not allowed a great deal of freedom. So some places within the Aegean region, such as Corinth, decide to exert some independence at different times, ultimately leading to their destruction. So Corinth in 146 BCE was destroyed for exerting independence, and it never really regained its prominence. It was still, it was rebuilt, but just didn't have the same pizzazz as what it once did. In 133 BCE, Rome inherited parts of Western Asia Minor as Seleucid kings died and things and territory came to them. In 121 BCE, the lower part of Gaul was made into a Roman province. So the Republic is steadily expanding over the decades. It's not taking very long at all. So you can see the red dot here, that's Rome. That's the original Roman territory at the establishment of the Republic. The purple So basically the boot of the Italian peninsula. This is the expansion to the beginning of the First Punic War. Then we get into these coral regions here, like these pink regions, and this is how much territory the Roman Republic gained at the end of the Punic Wars. And then that which is in orange, that's what comes up to the death of Julius Caesar in 44 BCE. So let's end there, and we'll pick up with the Twilight of the Republic in our next